All right, yeah, I did want to focus on the developers. I'm coming at this kind of from a different angle too, which is if we're going to really kick off this ecosystem, how do we start actually getting the apps happening so that we're actually starting the off-ramping process, right? Let's get some stuff out there that kind of bridges the gap and we start that migration process. Old school app architecture. This is 99.9% of the apps that run out there today, right? I've got an iPhone, it talks to an app server, and that app server stores in a database, and there's a front-end client, and all this, any developer is going to recognize this, right? So what's critical about this is that this app talks to a bunch of third-party services, which are going to be Facebook, Twitter, Gmail, you name it, and maybe, if there is a personal cloud, maybe that's kind of an afterthought, and we plug it in down at the bottom, and somehow I can export data out to that, right? So you'll look at anything in the quantified self, right? I've got a Fitbit on me, it uploads everything to Fitbit, and then I have to go and I have to manually download it. If I do my taxes online, I have to go manually download it, right? It's always kind of an afterthought, and it's fundamentally flawed architecture, right? What does this create? For the app developer, this is API spaghetti hell. It really sucks to develop apps like this and bring them to scale. We have all this different provider data. It creates a natural convergence point where basically everyone just goes off of Facebook, and we all end up using Facebook Connect, which fundamentally is not going to work in the long run. So what else can we do? All right, this is a very simplified view of it, but what we're basically saying here is, well, rather than actually have the PDS be a full stack right out of the gate, let's start thinking of the PDS as a proxy. And this is why I went after Drummond, because the easiest way to think of this is my PDS is my email server. In the same way that I upload from my phone, I send an email, it goes to my email server, and then it goes out to wherever else, and then someone else interacts with it on an interface. Let's start looking at a PDS network in that way, so that minimally my PDS acts as a proxy. From an app running on my iPhone now, we've got a little bit of code that pushes up to my PDS and that passes on to the app, right? That alone automatically starts the process where now we can capture all the data at the PDS. We essentially clone it as it passes through the app. And it has this amazing property that now my login is centralized. I can log in with my PDS, and all my devices can get access to that data, right? And we can start the process of starting to normalize data, whether it's quantified self data, social data, you name it. This creates one API for app developers, right? As an app developer myself, this is amazing. Like now on a weekend, I can create an app that gets access to all social data that's plugged in. And the user doesn't even need to have a personal cloud to begin with, right? As long as we can solve the provisioning problem, which we have plans for being able to do that. So provisioning problem solved, and a way to do connectors. So for that particular user, they can pull in their Facebook data, their LinkedIn, whatever, and now I just have one input, one API to grab all of that data, right? An early prototype of this is singly, but they're doing it as a hosted service versus a distributed network. But a great service for developers. How to build it? All right, so we're announcing today, and this is early stage announcement, but what we learned over the last year of building ConnectMe was that there's some really hard social and data problems that we had to tackle, and now we're taking components of what we learned and starting to open source them and put them into a PDS network model. So we started putting code up at Respect.io. This we hope to be a reference implementation for a PDS endpoint, because we can't network them if we can't agree at least on what the endpoint looks like. And this is all open source modular components. They're designed to start solving problems for developers early on in a modular way. So you can take a component and start solving current pain points. You don't need to use the full stack right away, right? So really critical, this is an on-ramping process for developers. Start using components now, and as more become available, you become more and more PDS compatible. Pluggable engines, there's an XDI engine, and we can plug anything else in there if you got some PDS goodness. Why we're building it, we've learned a lot on ConnectMe. We want this as a framework for ourselves. We hope that it can be a kind of a Rails of PDS, and we want to open source it because we want everyone else contributing to it. You can check it out at respect.io. Again, it's pretty early. Like this is kind of a week old. A lot of documentation, real code up and running, but you'll see a lot more in the next month.
question. Open source license hasn't been mentioned for any of the presentations. Which model offers best value for end users? So what's your end user license? Like, what's the open source license?
It's up there as MIT, and we'll probably dual license it under Apache and MIT. But yeah, we want it to be completely open.
Great. Questions?